Well, welcome back into TexAgs Rewind presented by Yeti. Yo soy David Nuño. Estamos aquí con Eric Casares. Eric, let's talk about what was on the show today. OB was in Destin. We're getting some text messages about OB in a Speedo in a pool, but we don't need to get into that. But your favorite part of the show today was Andrew Monaco. Why?
Because of course, the voice of Aggie Athletics, talking a little bit about baseball, gearing up for the regional championship. So we're excited to see them go at it up there in Stanford. And yeah, that was my favorite part of the show. And then, of course, we talked track and field with Coach Henry. You had Tom Hart on the show. And then you had a couple Aggie alumni on.
Yeah, we had some legends on the program, no doubt. Chuck Knoblauch and Scott Livingstone on the program. We talked about the old days. We talked about the new days. And now you watch TexAgs Rewind.
Well, I think there's no doubt about that. I think he's the proponent of the 9-game schedule. I think everything he said before that had kind of indicated that that's the way he feels. I think there's some frustration from him that this 8-game model is picking up so much traction now. You know that there's probably 3 major factors in that, and I'll be discussing those later today. But number one, if you have an 8-game schedule, everybody still gets to have their 7 home games, and SEC teams have always been very protective of that. You don't want to get into a year where if there's 9 games where you got 4 home games. So everybody wants their 7 home games. And then there's the whole thing with ESPN. Look, we've talked about it earlier this week. Right now, they're not, even though a 9-game schedule would give them more premium games at this point, they're balking on renegotiating the deal that I think was signed in 2020 and paying more money for those premium games. And then I still don't think you can overlook it that Nick Saban is spoken out about wanting to go to or stay at an 8-game model because he thinks the 3 teams that he'd play, LSU, Auburn, and Tennessee, that's unbalanced. That makes things more difficult for him, even though if you look at LSU, who Alabama would play, and look at their 2 other opponents, would be probably A&M and Ole Miss. Well, I think if you look at it over the last 10 years, A&M and Ole Miss, compared to Tennessee and Auburn, at the very least, it's an equal matchup. And maybe the advantage would be to A&M and Ole Miss over the 10-year period, showing that, LSU even maybe you could argue would play as difficult, if not a more difficult schedule. So I think those 3 factors are definitely in play.
And there's been some young players stepping up.
Yeah, they're not freshmen any longer, right? Or they're more accustomed. He raved about Shane Sadeo over the course of that tournament. And again, you kind of understand who's in what role. And I think it goes both ways. Where are you comfortable in a role? Look, Will Johnston's now a starter. Mm-hmm. Will wanted to be a starter and worked on that to be a starter. Sadeo comes in out of the bullpen and has been effective. How good has Brandon Garcia been throughout the course of this season? Look, it wasn't the same in February and March, and then you become acclimated. Jim said something about that's a young man who wasn't sure, hadn't visited A&M yet last year at this time, and then wasn't sure if he may go pro. Right. You don't know. But it clicked. He said it was the Auburn series, Evan Aschenbeck all season long, which no one saw that coming. And then it wasn't just a flash in the pan. So dependable. So that's what's really been fun to see, that now that you know your role, I think you get more comfortable. And the job now is to throw strikes because you can trust that that defense has been dependable all season long. I think once that all comes together, and then there's nothing to fear from all these lineups. And that's why I always ask this. They had to face those types of lineups in the fall. Right. That's what they face. I think that A&M lineup is as good as any lineup, in the SEC. So you're throwing strikes, depend on your defense. That's why you can pitch the way you can against an offense like Tennessee, and then Arkansas, and then South Carolina, and then LSU, and then Arkansas again, and then Vanderbilt. There's nothing that they haven't seen.
I was going through the rankings, and Stanford on May 21st was the number 3 team of the country.
Yeah.
They just went through a bunch of teams in the top 5 themselves. I mean, this team is battle-tested. And to me, it all comes back to, can you pitch well enough?
Sure.
You don't have to have one-hitters.
No.
It'd be nice.
Those are great.
Well, in fact, more, please. Tom, 8 host sites, man. Look, I don't know what that means about how many teams, obviously A&M being a 2 seed. I don't know what that means about how many teams are going to get to Omaha. but they're going to get some teams in Omaha.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think it's a bigger picture reflection of the talent drain from Southern California to the SEC. I mean, you look around the league, and so many teams have gone out there and grabbed guys that otherwise would have ended up at USC, UCLA, Cal Irvine, Fullerton, all places that have been semi-regular, teams that show up in Omaha. But because the SEC is so big, not just the stadiums and the fan base, but also the television network plays a major role in what kids see and how much baseball they watch. These guys go out there and recruit them, and they take some of the best talent from Southern California. I always thought that the College World Series is at its best when the different regions are represented, right? I mean, I love the variety. I like seeing an Oregon State. I like seeing a Stanford and Irvine, Fullerton, as I mentioned before. But so much of the talent now just resides in the SEC that it's harder and harder. We've got one host site on that coast, which is unbelievable when you think about all of the amateur baseball talent that resides on the West Coast, specifically Southern California and even Arizona. So I think that's what it's a reflection of, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. The rich are getting richer, and if the Big Ten, even if the Big Ten chose to invest in baseball with the money they have coming in from the television contracts, the weather and the fan support is not conducive to growing the sport there, unless they got to a point where they moved it back by 2 months and they played in the summer. So it is what it is, and I fully expect the SEC to continue to build.
Tell me about the time you met Chuck, like the first time. I think you guys played 2 seasons together. Just talk about that, maybe that first time you met and how you guys developed this friendship.
Well, we played together in '87 and '88, and I remember Chuck coming on a recruiting trip to Olsen Field, and I think your leg was broken, or
yeah,
and he was still a huge recruit, and I'm not sure if he played his senior year or part of it. I'm not sure when it was broken, but I knew he was big time when we were putting the full court press on him and he was limping around Olsen Field, and we're like, this guy, he can't even move. What's he going to do for us? And I mean, the rest is history. I mean, I told you earlier, he's one of the, probably the most athletic people that I've ever played with. And I've played with Ricky Henderson, Tony Gwynn, and a bunch of guys, and Chuck could do it all. But meeting him and having a chance to hang around Kane Hall, which is not there anymore, the athletic dorm, it was fun, and we did a lot of stuff together, and it was some good times.
Good times.
What do you remember about those days, Chuck?
Well, just like you said, really. I mean, it's good to hear somebody say something like that. So I appreciate it, Scott. But yeah, I mean, it was just a great time. I had a great 3 years at A&M. I wouldn't change that for anything.
I've read that you've said that those 3 years were the best of your life. What made it such a treasure for you?
Just the winning atmosphere that we had. We had great guys. I mean, I don't know if you knew we had the 30 reunion of our 89 team in 2019, and like almost everybody showed up, which Coach Johnson was saying that's unheard of. Kathy Cap said the same thing. You guys were the best attended sport of any team that they ever bring back. And, that just speaks to the guys that we had on the team.
Señor Casares, por favor, no, let me do that again. I was gonna have talked the whole time in Spanish, but I changed my mind. Señor Casares, tell us about what they're supposed to do after the show.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, share, turn the notification bell on so you don't miss a thing when we post. And what did I say? Rate. I mean, there's so many things. Review. Tell a friend. There's so many things. I mean, send it to your mom. How about that?
If you do that, tell her I send her a hello. Gig 'em. We'll see you next time.